Ladies and gentlemen, I just finished watching From Season 4, Episode 1, and I gotta tell you, this episode is absolutely fantastic. At this point in time, because I had access to the screeners, I've gotten to watch this episode quite a bit and make sure that my opinion is sound and not from too much of a place of bias, because I've seen them early and all of that stuff and the excitement there. I genuinely, wholeheartedly believe this is one of the best episodes of the show because it was dynamite through and through, and this first episode really does feel like the entire crew, from the writing staff, the acting, even the crew members, everyone, it feels like everyone is finally hitting their stride, and it feels like it's a matured show where everyone just knows their place, knows how to tell this story. And I feel like that's because of just the overall pacing of this episode. And I hope that momentum stays throughout the season. I really do. I hope we keep up with that sort of momentum, because if we do, this is very, very exciting to me. There were so many things to unpack in this episode that I don't even know where to begin, so I'm just going to kind of run through it as we go. The beginning sequence where Julie it literally happens right after the events of the final episode of season 3. Julie is talking to the man in the yellow, and the man in yellow is like, we really have to stop meeting like this. I find that absolutely fascinating, and I'm really excited to see what that means, because clearly she's going to be story walking somewhere and seeing him over and over again. And that's very interesting to me, because what is she going to be seeing with him? How is she going to be seeing him? Is he going to be like this all the time? Is he going to be like someone else? Which, by the way, we have major spoilers by the end of this episode for what happens there with the man in yellow, so we're going to get to that in a little bit. But it just opens so many doors for what they are going to be doing with Julie. If she keeps bumping into him and she keeps seeing him, what does that mean? I don't know. I do find it interesting that right after the fact, he explains to her in a mocking way, you can't change a story by going and visiting it. You can't change the past. And that's very interesting to me because it makes me curious. Like, it sounds almost like he's tired, like he's seen this before. And I wonder if that's a common theme throughout this season and where we're gonna go, wherein it's kind of like, is the man in yellow the one calling the shots? I don't know. But what I do know is for a fact that this episode came out answering a lot of questions, or at least giving us things in a way that feels like we're going to be getting a lot of answers to a lot of questions that we have, and that's something that I'm very, very, very excited for. I do find it interesting that right after we see this, we see that little conversation with Jim, and he's like, I liked you. It's a shame that this had to happen, because again, that does make it seem like he's not the one exactly calling the shots. But then what does that mean? And the reason I feel this way is because when he's going to walk over to the box to shapeshift into what we learn in major spoilers right now, that's Sophia, I feel like he has this sense of like amusement and excitement that is almost like this was given to him by someone, not directly from him. So what does that mean? Because it seems to me like we're going in this place where there is some sort of omnipotent power. By the way that later in this episode, Fatima says that she saw for a brief period of time, the woman in the Komodo basically showed her that the monsters of Fromville basically were given eternal life by sacrificing. So I'm curious, basically, I'm guessing what that means is like they made a deal with something. Is that something the man in yellow, or is that something else? I don't know, but just to me, the way that the man in yellow goes over to the box and gets excited when he sees it, like, it makes me think there is some other omnipotent force there controlling this. And I guess while we're at it, we'll just jump into the big spoiler as it is, because this happens at the very end of the episode. But now that we're talking about the man in yellow, I just want to talk about it. The big reveal, the big reveal of this episode that had me freaking the hell out when I first saw it was the fact that Sophia is actually the man in yellow. So we basically have an imposter among us, you sussy baka.
You've been seeming sus lately, you sussy baka.
You know what I mean? What the fuck? What the hell? So now we have this imposter in our group, and Whatever that means for the story is absolutely terrifying, because even as she is killing the father there, she's saying what happens next is her favorite part. The man in yellow said that to Jim. I'm fascinated, genuinely fascinated to see where that brings this story. Is she going to be wreaking havoc? Is she going to be doing it in more of a slow fashion? I don't know what this means, but it's so freaking exciting. And that's why I think this episode is so special, because you have that as an end cap, but every bit of the journey from there was just so exciting. We come out swinging with the man in yellow. We come out absolutely swinging with that, and then we jump into momentum that we're about to get into in a minute. But while we're talking about this man in yellow, one of the things that I think gets me a little skeptical about this is I feel like the man in yellow, the actor who plays him, and just the character, the man in yellow, is one that I personally was very, very excited to see, because I think he carries this creepy charisma in a way that characters like Negan or Lalo Salamanca do, where they just have this very menacing and intimidating appearance, but also they're fun and you want to watch them. So now, and this is nothing against the actress at all, I don't mean anything like this against the actress, but for him to be taking the shape of someone else, and that is still the man in yellow, I am a little worried about that, because I think my excitement for the man in yellow was solely this creature with the black eyes, with the yellow suit. And I totally get it. He has to take the shapeshift, because the more I'm thinking about it, we've seen Victor's drawings. Victor has drawn the man in yellow. Victor's also been around for a long time, which Julie, clearly by the way that Julie and him have that interaction where he's like, why do we keep running into each other? We really need to stop like this. He can't go as the man in yellow, and I do fully understand that. But I guess I'm just a little worried about that, because we're not getting that physical embodiment of the character. Though, that doesn't mean I'm not excited for Sophia, because I actually think this idea of Sophia being this imposter is even more exciting than the man in yellow ever was. So I can't say it's a negative, but I definitely have that sort of mixed emotion towards it because of that, because of, I guess, having this long break in between season 3 and season 4 of this, who the hell is this man in yellow? And for it to already just be a different character feels a little stark to me, but I hope that they do it justice, and it really is for a good reason. I do think it's going to be. I really do trust these writers. I know you should never go into a story trusting writers, but I do think that, from everything I've learned about it, from everything I know from the interviews I've done to anything I've learned about the show, these guys have a clear direction of where the story is going in one way, shape, or form. So I'm going to trust that this makes sense, but I feel a little mixed on that decision. Anyway, we have so much more of this episode to get into. Right after that sequence, we jump right into the immediate aftermath of Fatima giving birth, which was really interesting because Fatima basically explains what I said earlier in this. She tells Kenny and Ellis that she had this glimpse that these monsters gave a deal with something to give them eternal life. And that is so fascinating and interesting because we're immediately getting answers. Now we know for a fact that is part of this story, this spiritual sort of, this has to be going in some sort of spiritual realm, because what the fuck else does that mean? I'm sorry, what else does that mean? I don't know, maybe we're not going into the spiritual realm, but they made a bargain with something to be given eternal life, and then they became these monsters, which is so fascinating. And that's one thing, that's a big reveal in the episode. But then we get Kenny going into the tunnels, and we see Boyd is down there, and the little jump scare that happens when Boyd comes out. And of course, what do we see? We see Smiley saying, "Hi, Kenny, it's nice to see you again." Like, dude, that pacing from those first 2 scenes alone, and there's 15 different scenes in this episode, of all different breakdown shots and all that stuff. That's an awesome way to start this. So right after that, we kind of get Boyd and Kenny going back to the police station. And when they go back to the police station, Boyd has this, it's one of my favorite scenes of the episode. He has this incredible monologue or just speech in general to Kenny about how he wants to keep a head count of everyone who is there because he needs to make sure he has enough bullets, because now Boyd knows that there is no winning. There is no winning at all. The game is rigged. He even says that later in the episode, that the game is rigged. And I'm very excited for where that is going to bring Boyd, because I do think that is going to bring Boyd in this interesting arc that we've never seen, where he is really giving up hope, because now he's seen that the monster that he killed is literally just back. Like, what? Like, excuse me? Smiley is just back. So I thought that scene was really interesting, where he's talking to Kenny and he's like, Kenny's like, we have 47 people. And Boyd's like, I just need to make sure I have enough, because if we can't control how we win this game, we need to control how we exit this game. I thought that was a really interesting thing to explore, because he's right. I mean, the only option he has is to mitigate how you could leave here. I thought that was great, and we're going to come back to it, because I think Harold's performance in this episode was absolutely top-notch, especially later when it comes to Ellis and him and their conversation and the way Harold breaks down. I think it's just so wonderful. Then after that, we get the immediate aftermath of what happened with Elgin and Sarah and Donna and Christie and Acosta. We get that whole aftermath, and I think it's introduced really well, where as soon as Donna walks in the room with Christie, Acosta's pointing the gun at them, and Donna's like, we all know it's not loaded, put the fucking thing down. I just thought that's funny. That's why I love Donna. I think she's one of my favorite characters. She is my favorite character for that reason. So that's exciting to see, but okay, then the Elgin stuff happens. I don't think there's really too much for me to talk about the Elgin stuff, other than Christie finds out about it. Okay, so there's that. So then we see the man in yellow shapeshifting, which I thought was really interesting. He's like all excited, and then he comes, and then he like does the freaking spider thing where he's like all like this, and then he shapeshifts. I thought that was pretty cool. But again, like I mentioned earlier, he's in this like trance-like state as he's doing it, like he's excited about it. And that leads me to think someone else is in control. So there's that. And if you see me looking off, I have my handy-dandy little iPad here where I've taken a lot of notes, because I've had a lot of time to collect every little piece here that I want to talk about. So again, the standout thing was Kenny and Boyd. That was definitely a big standout thing. The Elgin thing happens. Now, the only thing that wasn't tackled in this episode that I'm really interested to see, and I hope that they don't like span this out throughout more of the season, I hope like we get an answer here relatively quick, is to what happened to Jim from a reactionary standpoint with Tabitha, Ethan, and Julie. Because this episode, what we saw from them is obviously he didn't come home at night, and Tabitha thinks it's a little weird, but she doesn't want to think it's anything super crazy. But Ethan and Julie are obviously very concerned about it. But then later in the episode, there is that taunting that happens where all the cabinets open and all of that stuff. Like, they're clearly being mocked for this. But are they mocked by the man in yellow, or are they mocked by someone else? I don't know. But it's really interesting to see. So I just hope that they don't span that out too long. I hope we get an answer, or at least get to see the reaction there to what Tabitha, Julie, and Ethan are experiencing in this episode quickly. I hope they get some sort of a reveal there, one way, shape, or form. To me, in the beginning of this episode, like, at first, when I first watched it, I thought that the man in yellow was going to be shape-shifting into Jim, because we got in the trailer that shot of Jim, I don't know who he's I don't remember who he's talking to, but we get that shot of Jim, and he's clearly there this season in some capacity. So I guess I'm just like, I thought it was going to be that he was going to shapeshift into Jim, and that he'd come back as an imposter. That would have been crazy, but the reveal we got is really cool reveal, so I'm very excited about that. I just really hope they don't drag it on, because I guess if he's obviously not shape-shifting into Jim, then Jim must be dead. We still didn't really see that this episode, but I mean, he has to be, by the way he's saying, I liked you, it's a shame you're not gonna see. He's gotta be dead, right? Like, he's gotta be. So I just hope they don't drag it out throughout the whole season, and I hope we do get an answer soon about that. And it seems like I'd have to imagine we will. I don't know, but I'd have to imagine we will. So Yeah, then we saw the shot from the trailer of Acosta and Boyd talking, and she calls him a monster. Nothing really came of that. She went away. I hope they don't, like, waste her character this season. I hope she actually has an arc that is fulfilling, that isn't just so much like a Randall-style character. Not that there's... Randall's came around, and I actually like Randall, but, like, I don't want to see too much angst with her. I hope, like, they give her an arc, and she's just not, like, there for this and then nothing happens with her. I hope we get to see something with her, to be honest, because I do think the casting choice is really interesting and is going to lead to something good. I just don't know what that is yet. Then we get Donna, Boyd, Kenny, and all of them talking, which was also very interesting, and I think some of Harold's best moments. I really do feel like when Liz Saunders and Harold are on screen, when they're together, they carry the show because they just have this force that is just wonderful to follow. They really just, like, play off each other well, and as leaders, they're both so different, and that works so well. They just, like, vibe off of each other. But one of the scenes I love the most, she goes out, Donna goes out, and then she sees Victor and Victor's father, like, setting up bunk beds in the room. I just thought it was so goofy. It was a good break from all, like, the misery we saw in this episode. So I'm definitely excited to see more of them and what happens with their story. But I love Donna. I'm so excited to see more from her and all of that. But the standout of that whole sequence is obviously Boyd is giving up as much as humanly possible. Christie has this great moment where she basically says, get your shit together, because if I'm, like, cleaning up dead bodies or cleaning up people who have gotten their eyes ripped out and all that shit, like you need to be the face, because without you this whole place falls apart. I find that so interesting because it's so true. It is very true. But the standout there, like I mentioned earlier, was Ellis and Boyd having that scene where Boyd absolutely breaks down. So I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Other than that, we had Kenny talking to Sophia and basically explaining things, but obviously we now know Sophia is an imposter, you sussy frickin' baka.
You've been seeming sus lately.
That's very exciting to me, and then that reveal at the end is very exciting to me. The way they came into town with the crash and all that is just so awesome. And just to add fuel to this and more, that this has to, I feel like this has to be spiritual. All the man in yellow, Sophia, did was touch the chest of the father for him to have that seizure. And there's definitely something with these seizures, because every time we've had Elgin come into town with a seizure, we had, I think it was it Ethan who had the seizure? Yeah, I think it was Ethan that had the seizure. And the father, but the father was directly because he was touched by the man in yellow. There's spiritual something going on here. We're clearly seeing that, and I think we're clearly going in that sort of direction. What that means, I genuinely have no idea. I don't know what that means, but I have to believe that that's the direction we're heading. And guys, if I could talk about this, what are we recording at, 20 minutes without stopping? If I could talk about this for 20 straight minutes, I hope you know, just because I saw this episode early, I hope you know that I'm trying not to come at this from a place of bias. I'm really trying my hardest, but I genuinely, thoroughly loved this episode. I thought this finally gave us, like, some clear path that we're going on. The one thing I forgot to mention is Tabitha and Jade. Tabitha and Jade, they have some brief interaction about it. I don't like when characters seem to regress, but I do understand where Tabitha's coming from, where she's like, Sarah thought what she saw was real, and, like, how am I to believe that we are actually the father, the parents of all these children and all of that stuff? Like, I understand her skepticism, but I also hate seeing that too. You know what I mean? Like, it pisses me off. But we didn't really get too much with them. So I'm sure we're going to be getting more of that soon. So this episode just set up so much to come. I just really hope that momentum remains, because I do wholeheartedly think that this show is just in a great position right now to have a wonderful season. If this is anything like what Liz Saunders explained to me when we had our interview, and that it's like one really bad week that just snowballs and gets worse and worse, I really hope that's what this is setting up. I genuinely think that's a fascinating, premise, and we have the foundation with this episode. So I just hope it doesn't disappoint, because this was dynamite. I loved it. This is one of my favorite episodes of the show. Again, I hope you understand, I'm not trying to say that because I saw it early and have that inherent bias. There is obviously going to be that inherent bias, and I have to address that at the end of this. I know I've been rambling for a while, so if you want to click off here, click off here. But just have to address that. I know I got sent these screeners, and I know that there is that inherent bias that comes from it, because that's exciting. It's the first time things like that have happened on this channel. But I wish you could get inside my head to understand that I'm really, really trying to go into these episodes that I watch as unbiased as I can and watch it as a true fan, because I am a true fan of this show. Like, I love every single bit of this show. So, like, when I'm watching this, I'm writing things down right away and giving you my reactions as I watch the things I see. So I just want you to know that. I wish I could translate that into you to understand that, like, even though there is that inherent bias there, I'm trying to be as unbiased and balanced as I can. And I don't want you to think I'm just shilling for the show to shill for the show. If I have negatives to say, I'm going to say them. I'm never going to hold back on this channel. But I didn't feel that way this episode. I had the skepticism about the man in yellow and a little bit about Tabitha. But honestly, this was almost a flawless episode to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you guys know that. But with all that out of the way, I definitely want to hear from you. Did you enjoy this episode as much as me? That'll also help me learn how much of this is in my head of me trying to not be biased and all of that stuff. I want to know from you guys, do you feel the same way? I'd love to hear that. So with all that out of the way, let's take it to the comments, and until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.